Hey everybody, Dr. Richard Olberger here, and thank you for joining me for a special edition of the Richard Listens podcast. As always, I'm Dr. Richard Olberger, your consummate host, here to keep you going through the quarantine and beyond into the world of high performance, high performers, and people who have transitioned from all walks of life to share their secrets with us about how they've overcome, how they stay resilient, and how you too can channel your own inner hero into whatever venture you're working on. Today, my guest is Mr. Chijioke Akujuobi, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. He'll correct me if I'm wrong. And he is a former Division I soccer player for Gardner-Webb University and is currently working on productions, commercials, films here in the Los Angeles area and bringing his talents and continuing his athletic pursuits into adulthood and beyond. And we'll talk about playing at the highest levels and competing, on the national level and competing with the best of the best on the soccer pitch and what it's like to rub elbows with some of the best of the best. Without further ado, we thank you all for joining us. I thank all of you for bringing your stories to me, for trusting me in the work you do, and for letting me tell your stories. All right, without further ado, everyone, as promised, we have Chijioke Akujuobi. I got it right. Did I get it? Yes.
You got it.
How many times in your life, Chijioke, did you have to correct people along the way, or coaches?
Man, you know what's funny? I never had to go correct people. I already assumed they didn't know. So I would before they wouldn't even say a word. They'd look at a piece of paper and they'd be like,
number 18.
And I'd be like, I just raised my hand I just raised my hand hey, this is me, because I knew my name was the hardest to pronounce, and it was just they wouldn't even have to say anything. They just look at a sheet of paper. They'd be like, I was like, right here.
And I actually saw at the we had the COVID-friendly Emmys, right? That just passed, the Emmy Awards, is that right, for entertainment?
Yeah, so I didn't really watch it, but I saw a few clips of it.
And some of the I forget for which category. One of the award winners has a hyphenated last name that's multicultural, and he spoke to it. He was like, "This is for every kid out there whose name is difficult to pronounce." And I was like, right on, they represent, right? People should feel included and understood that's different when your name, clearly has some roots and history to it. Now for you grew up in DC, but your parents, did they emigrate over from Nigeria?
Yeah, so my parents are Nigerian. They moved here 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever. They moved here, and I was born in D.C. I grew up in Houston, but I was born in D.C., moved to Virginia, Maryland. We lived on that side of the country for a little while. I think my parents moved to Louisiana for a little bit. I lived in Austin before I ever moved to Houston, and then I lived in Washington State, Pullman, Washington, before I even moved to Texas. We moved to Texas, we never left Texas, so we moved to Houston after I lived in Washington State for a little bit. So it was a whole we moved left and right, and we went everywhere until this is all before second grade. So I moved 30 times before I even second grade hit. So I had already been so many different places before.
30 times?
I mean, we probably moved 3 or 4 houses in each place. We weren't. It's not I just moved to city to city. Nah, it was we lived there for a few years, and then we moved 3 houses, and then we moved to this city for 3 years, and we moved 3 houses, and I just remember going from house to house to house in the same place for a little bit, and then moving to a whole other side of the country or in another state, and then 3 different houses. It was cool because you're young, you don't care. You're new place, it was whatever.
So early on, it was exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it was exciting, but also I remember that feeling of when you move to somewhere that you enjoy, and you're oh, I'm gonna be here forever. I'm gonna stay here forever. We're never gonna move. Parents come and say, hey, we're moving. When we lived in Pullman, I loved it. I loved Pullman, Washington. It was for me, it was like Candyland. You know what I'm saying? It was just like a real fun place to live, and everybody was cool. And I was like, man, we're gonna live here forever. Then my parents came and said, hey, we're moving to Texas. Oh man, I was crying. I was like, oh, I don't want to move to Texas. It's like, what's that? And like, I like it here. We made friends. That feeling of like, and then I think when I was young like that, it was that feeling of like, making friends and like you're really cool to me. Like, oh, these are gonna be my friends forever. And then knowing you have to leave them and then going to the next place. It's really, as a young kid, that's really a big thing, because I didn't notice it until I started getting older how normal it was for me to go somewhere else and make new friends. It got easier and easier as I kept doing it as a kid, because
Yeah,
as a
and certainly
kid,
that's what a lot of like athletes have to do, and what a lot of people in the military have to do, families. And it's a wonderful skill. It's an adaptive skill that you create friendliness, warmth, the ability to relate. But it's kind of the opposite of what we're needing as a kid, right? We're wanting to get attached or put down roots or feel included.
yeah.
Was it because your dad was in academia, or just where the
Yeah, my dad,
opportunities were?
my dad was a professor, and he was in the teaching system. So I think it's just because he was like, and he was all about finding the best place to be. He didn't really care about like, oh well, we got friends here. He just moved. When you just come from another country, you just trying to find the best place for your family. And I think he found Houston to be like the most, reasonable financially, and it was a good fit for him. And me, I didn't care. We just went wherever our parents went. I didn't really think about it too much. So it was good for young black males who weren't raised American, but we weren't raised by anything in America. Like, our parents were Nigerian as it could be, so we were like not exactly like them, but we had like a lot of those values and like the things that they did. So we didn't even like, we didn't care what anybody else was doing. We had our own thing going on in our own house, but it was good because our parents threw us in so many different people's houses. We stayed with people, and like they took care of us. Sometimes my parents would go away, and they were white, Indian, black, like it was all different type of people. So that recurring faces come up in your head, and it starts to block out you believe in anybody's anything but what they are. Oh, this is my friend. I don't know where he's from. Where's he from? Oh, I
Right.
don't know. You
That
grow
early
up,
experience
you
blocks out
grow up,
any.
you grow up with that cycle mentality that everybody's the same in a way. Like, so it was that they did a great job. My parents did a great job of that. That's the one thing I can say. Hey, my parents, like, they're cool. Like they made sure that their kids were very aware that, we're all people and stuff like that. And that, no matter if you come from a different country or not, you can still get along with everybody else. So that was like the luckiest thing. Like, me and my brother are so against like, any of that. We're with the whole everybody trying to be together thing. And it's tough, it's not an easy thing.
Yeah. So when you see what's going on, we'll get into it later, but the protests and the conflict, it triggers those early belief systems, right? Like it
Yeah.
hurts that you're wanting to see unity and togetherness, and that's not what's happening.
Yeah, it's all about understanding, man. It's like the understanding part. People just have to try to understand each other a little bit. And I wrote it on Facebook the other day, just like, because I'm a big proponent of like Hispanics. Like, I've been with like, I played soccer. I grew up. My coach as a kid growing up was a Hispanic man. So like, I was in their house, I was eating their food, and I was like, they take me to practice, and I'd go home. So you spend time with the culture long enough. When you spend time with a certain group of people, you start to understand the value of that culture. And like, when you don't spend time with them at all, you're just going to make assumptions. So you're going to make assumptions from what you see at school or at practice, or you don't know unless you're living and going to those people's homes and like, experiencing that with them. And I think that's where a lot of people they lack that experience in the home. They never go to these people's houses. They never go to the quinceañeras and like, the parties, and they don't do those things. So how are you expecting to really understand? You're only seeing the worst of them. You're not really seeing the best of them. Like, when you see the best of a culture, the worst kind of, it doesn't hit as hard. It's not like, oh my God, I hate these people so much when they do something bad. Cause obviously every culture has its thing where you probably don't like it, but I've had issues with every culture on this planet, but I've had so many good things happen with all these cultures that those little issues don't trump the way I see everything. You know what I'm saying? So I've been lucky, man. I've been really lucky, and my parents did a good job of like, keeping
Yeah,
that.
and that's the work they've been doing, even in the Middle East. Groups, peace groups that have been having like Arab and Jewish kids raised together and taking certain spiritual curriculum together, or
Yeah.
kids from, when you get that early life upbringing of being exposed, then you find commonality. You find that kind of experience, because a lot of the negativity, the hatred, the projecting and stereotypes comes from like lack of understanding, or obviously in our current circumstance, when we start to feel when people are suffering or in pain, they're looking for who's causing that pain as well. So right, we're looking for those that have maybe are not treating us in the way that we feel. So when it comes to, you know, systemic oppression, clearly in our country, there's been a history of feeling like, well, hold on a minute, right? If I can't ever get seen, or I can't ever get valued in the same way, or if I'm seen only as a function of, when it comes to sports, right, my athleticism, right, at some level, or if I'm not given the same opportunity. So it's good that it's raising this question, right? Are we truly seeing one another? Are we truly looking for this shared value of individuality? Are we trying to create kind of a case system, a value system where, you know, only certain, where privilege is maintained above all else? And I think I'm glad that's being, you know, kind of unveiled and looked upon. Yeah, and I know you've shared. I'm proud, and you've been sharing your experiences, because it's different, right? Coming in as a you know, a Nigerian American coming in to the sporting environment, right? On some level, you're getting the same discrimination. On the other hand, you have this upbringing that's exposing you to the world.
Yeah.
That must have been unique for you.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, I think everybody doesn't get that, like, no group's perfect. You know what I mean? Like, no group, even like I was raised to think like Nigerians were like the #1 species on the planet. Like, I was raised to think like they were perfect, and there's nothing wrong with those people believing that they are perfect and that they are like the #1 or whatever they feel like, because that's the confidence you have to have as a culture. And like I feel like that as an individual. Like, I never felt like I was less of a person than anybody from the, you know, and you might not hear that from a lot of young black guys. You know, they feel like, oh well, people, you know, they don't have that. If you have that, just like that esteem value about yourself, it's really hard for people to take that away from you. You know, it's really, really hard, because, but if you don't have it, anything that they say can trigger you to make you feel like you're not, you know, as valued as you know, as you should be. And I've never
Right.
felt like that. I mean, of course there's times where people, you know, you have moments where people say things or do things and, you know, you're young or whatever. But as far as the overall and like how I feel, nah, I never really felt like I was like less. I've been always taught to be like a king to a certain extent.
Well, that belief system is key, right? Even though, right, we could say like, man, walking around saying you're the best, well, that means somebody else isn't the best. But internally, it gives you a lot of confidence and pride if that's what's being taught, you know.
It does if you use it right, and you know, you don't use it to boost yourself. I always say, once you start thinking you're cool, you're not cool. You know, like, you know, and I never thought I was cool. I never saw myself as like the cool guy. But people be like, "Oh, you're cool." I'm like, I don't know what that is, because I don't believe in being cool. I just say, man, treat people the right way. You know, don't boost yourself too much. You know, don't, like, you can talk well about yourself, but, you know, always have that inner confidence. I always say, when you have outward confidence, it can sometimes come off as cocky, but when you have that inward confidence, and then are you boosting the people around you? Do people feel like when they're with you that they're going to win? You know, like, that's like the biggest thing, is like, when you, like, you know, I always felt like when I was on the team, like, even if I had good players around me or not good players around me, we can win because I'm here, you know? Like, that's how I felt. Like, I always felt like that. Like, as long as you have me here, you got a chance. And like, you got to give people
that's who you want on your team right there.
Yeah, you got to give people that. You got to give people that whole. You got to give people that same, you know, that same energy that they feel like, hey, I'm here. Like, I can help us win too. It's not just, oh, Choki's here, he's gonna help us win. Like, nah, well, I'm here too. I can help us win. You know, you always want to feel like, you always want to be the person who's holding everybody, you know, holding the weight on their shoulders. And if somebody has too much weight on their shoulders, take some of it off and put it on yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what this whole thing's about. But I think sometimes people, when they feel like they're doing everything and they feel like they're the one, they get a little cocky, they get a little bit above themselves, and they just kind of start, you know, saying all this stuff good about themselves. But the most confidence you can have about yourself is giving other people confidence. I think everything on the inside is just, after you have enough, it starts to just become about like ego and you being cocky. You got to give some of it away, and that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, well, you're touching on a lot of different aspects there, essence of leadership, believing that you can be a leader, not just the best player, and responsibility. Like sometimes players get this feeling, I have to do it myself. I have to take, and some of that comes from, right, trust, both trust in, can I build this other player up? Can I make them better? Can I encourage other people to believe in themselves? Right.
Yeah.
We saw everybody at the beginning of the quarantine started watching The Last Dance and see how,
Yeah.
Michael Jordan, he had him let Steve Kerr know you're going to be needed. Right. And maybe it was only for that, or John Paxson, right? Like that they're going to be needed, and they're going to be, or even Dennis Rodman, right? To let players on your team be who they are, but let them know they're also really, really important to what the team needs to do to win.
Exactly.
Yeah. So getting back to you as a soccer player, so you're moving all around. When did you discover soccer, and how did that, travel with you from a young age, starting in DC?
I think I like the first time I can remember ever playing. It's funny. It's actually a funny story. My brother actually played soccer. My brother ended up being a football player, so we moved to Texas. He ended up playing football, but man, I stayed in soccer. But I remember we lived in Washington. We lived in Pullman. It's always cold out there. It was like pretty cold, like town or whatever, small town. I just remember, if you don't know much about like Nigerian culture, this is like a little bit of it. I don't know if they still do these kind of things because it's like a new time and day, but uh can you hear me? Hold on. So yeah, if you don't know much about Nigerian culture, it's I didn't really know about it too, so as I started getting older. When I was a kid, I always found out that I got less than my brother did. My brother's older, same birthday, 2 years older. I got less than he did all the time, and I never understood why. But in the culture, it's like the oldest gets everything, and then the youngest gets nothing. Usually, if you're in a family, if you have a kid early on and you have another kid, the baby's like the responsive. He's like, oh, we got to take care of the little one, because it's like reverse. But the youngest one's really like not valued as highly as the older one, because the older one's like seen as like the king of the house because he's oldest. He's gonna be like the strongest and whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And the little one's like, oh, he's just a baby. Like we're not worried about him. Like he might not be whatever he wants to, whatever. Push him to the side. So when I was younger, we would be in a car and the car wouldn't be big enough. My parents didn't always have money. They ended up obviously doing better as once I got into we moved to Houston. My dad, he does well and everything like that. But as a young kid, we didn't have a lot, So I remember my mom used to work at Wendy's back in the day, like back in like the 90s, early 90s. I just remember like we had a stuffed car, Pathfinder, gold Pathfinder, Nissan Pathfinder. We used to stuff the car with all our stuff. I don't know why our stuff was always like packed in the car. There was no room for me to sit in the back seat with my brother. So my parents would sit in the front. They throw me in the trunk. Like it was an open trunk, but it was like the trunk, and like, hey, you have to sit back here. In my head, I was like, okay, whatever they do. So I was just got so used to being like last to have things, like when in my family's culture, we go to parties and stuff, they give the kids money. They gave my brother 100, they give me 50. If my brother got 40, I'd get 20. So I was just so used to always having less. It was just natural for me to believe that I wasn't going to get the most, which was cool because I was always humbled by it. I never felt like, oh, I deserved more. I was just like, oh, this is how things are. You know what I mean? And so when we moved to Washington, my parents, I guess they forgot because my brother always came first. My brother always came first. He was first one. He's the first one to get everything. They signed him up for soccer that year. So, it's soccer season. And, me, I'm like, okay, they signed me up. I'm just waiting to find out what team I'm on. I'm not in control of anything, and I go to this field one day and my parents are like, oh, my God, we forgot to sign you up for soccer. I started crying. Like, I used to be the biggest crybaby. I used to cry all the time. As I got older, I just literally stopped crying. I guess it's because I cried so much as a kid. But, like, they forgot to sign me up for soccer. And I was like, I started crying, like, oh, my God, you guys didn't sign me up for soccer. And my parents were like, dang it. Like, they didn't really care, but they were like, all right, it's not fair. We didn't sign him up. He should be playing too. So I'll never forget. They went up to my brother's coach. My brother's 2 years older than me. He's 2 years older. They went up to my brother's coach and said, hey, coach, we made a mistake. We didn't sign him for soccer. It's too late to get him registered. Is there any way we can get him to play with his brother since he's already on the team, and we can just get him on the team with you? And they were like, he's so small. I was like 30 pounds, when I was 11, 40 pounds. I went into high school at 115. Like I was very small, very skinny. They're like, hey, he's small and stuff. We don't know if like he should like, be playing with the bigger guys. And my parents were like, no, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. Just throw him out there. He can run and stuff like that. And I just remember that my jersey was so big because they didn't have like a regular size jersey, and my brother was on the field, and like I was like, all right, cool, like I'm gonna just jump on here, and I just went on there and like I went on there and did my best. Like I just went on there, I was scared, like super. I just remember being really really scared because everybody was older than me, but I wasn't scared to go out there. I was nervous, like oh my god, like these guys are bigger and they're faster.
But
I
you
was like,
wanted to play. That's
I
the
wanted to play,
price.
so I didn't care. I just jumped on there, and I don't remember if I did well or anything, but I stayed on the team for the whole season. And I think that helped me a lot as a kid because that my fear of like maybe I was gonna get hurt or something, that was out of the window now. So everything else, and when I started playing with people my age, I was like, oh, this is cake, like like this is nothing, So I think when you experience that, and you have an older brother who's a lot bigger. My brother was a football. His size, he was big, he was fast, he was strong. Like I was like, dang, I'm never gonna be able to beat this guy at anything. I'm never ever gonna be able to compete with him because he's just bigger, he's faster, he's stronger. Like, and he was like the supreme athlete. Even in high school, he was just the best athlete. I just was always trying to like reach him. He taught me how to play basketball. Like I was always trying to reach his level of ability because I had it, but I didn't have it. I didn't care to have it. I didn't really want to be. I didn't really care. I just was good at it. I was good at my sport, and I didn't care. But once you start caring, you start seeing the difference between like an average athlete to like the one of the best. You know what I mean? So that was where my mindset was. It was just a regular, casual, good athletic soccer guy. So once I moved from Washington, we moved to Houston. My dad was like, okay, I'm going to get you into soccer now. My dad was like with me all the time. He was like my guy, it was me and him all the time, like going to soccer games, practice, everything. So my coach was from Mexico. So he got me involved with my coach. His name's Sam Pena. Still to this day, he has never taken a penny to coach soccer because he told me that like one of the best things. He told me this like a few years ago, and I still talk to him every once in a while. He said, Chijioke, if I take money to coach soccer, I know I'll stop loving it. And he said, that's why I don't take money from you. I never took money from you guys. Like the only thing y'all paid for was like, ref fees or something like that. But I never took money from you guys because I knew I wasn't going to enjoy it. And his son was on the team with us. It was just a good, like I was coached by a real man that actually had some value about him and cared about the players and just wanted us to win because he wanted us to grow. And, he's a Hispanic man, like a Mexican. So I grew up with a lot of those qualities because they're all humble people because they don't have, not everybody that's Mexican has a lot. They come from another country. They're grinding just like my parents were, So I was just so used to going to fields. Like my dad, this guy's a full PhD professor who makes decent money. I'm going to the fields to pick up trash because not everybody on our team can afford to like play in these tournaments because they cost money. You know what I mean? So I would go still. I would go and like I'd act like, because I didn't have no money. I didn't have a dime. My dad had the money. But like I'd go and I'd help the team. I never thought about like, oh, I don't need to go there because I have the money. I was like, oh, okay, this is a team thing. We're gonna go. We'll do it together. They were like my family. So you grow up with a guy like that, and the way he really and he took a caring for me because I came like his son. Like he took care of me. I was the only black player on the team too. So like I was the only one he saw that we had one white kid. Everybody else was Hispanic, and I was the only black kid, but I was the fastest player. I was like the most talented. I remember he was like, I used to have a lot of 1v1s with the goalkeeper. And my biggest fear was like the kid behind me that was chasing me was going to hit me. Like as a kid, I'm 8, 9, 10 years old. I always had this fear like, oh, he's going to catch me. He's going to catch me. So I'd always miss my one-on-ones with the goalkeeper. My coach started getting on me like, hey, you need to start making them. Instead of benching me or not playing me, he actually saw that I had some talent. He would let the team practice on their own. Like the team would practice with our other coach. It was like one of the kids' parents. They would practice, and then he would pull me aside, and he'd pull another player aside and the goalkeeper, and he'd have me like 50 yards away from the goal, and he'd just have me sprint with a soccer ball, and he'd have a kid chase me. And he was like, you're going to get over your fear of like, somebody catching you and you're going to score. Just finish the ball. Put the ball in the back of the net every time. Somebody's going to chase you. And I did that for practice for like 2 or 3 weeks maybe a month and a half. And once I started doing that, I started forgetting about my fear of that player catching me or hitting me or something like that. And I just changed the way I thought about scoring goals. I was just scoring. I think one season I scored like 40 goals, like 50 goals. I was on another level just because a guy pulled me aside and said, hey, look, like, I think you can be something. and it's
Yeah,
hard.
this is beautiful on so many levels, right? I mean, on the one hand, you're starting out talking about birth order in your family and how, like, on the one hand, like the athlete, the older one is expected to do well. Like, there's no, like there's pressure there. There's
Always,
pressure.
for
There's
sure.
pressure, but you get the privilege of you're in. You get whatever you need to do well. On the other hand, as the younger one, you're like have to fight for your spot before you even
Literally,
before you even given a chance.
the
But yet the opportunity is that you're always overcoming your fear. You're always having to like get through.
having
Am
to
I good
like get
enough? Like, do
over.
I even belong here? Am I okay? So,
Exactly.
and then to find a coach who embraced you and gave you that aspect of team and safety, right? You're a part of something. You're a part of this. You don't have to do anything or be anything other than show up and contribute and bring your humility. He modeled that, and then to give you the chance to perform like that kind of performance scenario, practicing under pressure,
It's beautiful, man.
right?
It's
Because you're seeing how you're tensing up, or you're seeing how you're getting anxious before that point of execution. And it
yeah.
sounds like once that was overcome, you were free to excel.
And it was weird because I was so young, but I was so emotional when it came to people. Like I really like my mom used to always say, "Oh, you never liked people," but I just never smiled as a kid that much. I was always like frown face. But I really liked people a lot. I really,
I
I
still have
really,
a little bit of that, so you
yeah,
can
yeah, no,
that
you can
one.
have it. You can have it. Your facial expression can be whatever, but it's really how you feel about people. And I really liked people. I just never really I never really showed it. And my coach was like one of the one people who like came and grabbed me and was like, "Hey, look." So in return, I always felt like I had to perform for him, not necessarily because he didn't give me that vibe of like, "Oh, you have to play well because I coached you to be better." It was like, this is a guy who actually gives a damn about me, and I have to go out here and help the team. It became more than just playing. It was like a family thing, letting down your family, letting down everybody around you. Like the games meant something. Like they meant something because somebody actually cared. When somebody cares about you, you have to go hard for them. Like it's 100% like what you have to do. And I think sometimes in today's game, and I watch sports now, I don't think there's much of that. I think everybody just wants to, be successful, but you have to care about what you're doing. It has to be more than just the ball going in the hoop or the ball going in the goal or you hitting a home run. It has to be deeper than that because it's going to mean something every time you step up to anything you do, any level, like any place you go. Like that pressure is going to be there because you have the responsibility of the people that helped you get to where you were. And I think sometimes people lose that sight. When you always feel like that responsibility is there, you have to work harder. You have to train. You have to not worry about going out and partying every single day. And don't get it wrong, like I went out, but I never let going out replace the number one thing that mattered, and was me being the best I could be at what I do and like what I did. Like I played my game, and when I got to a point where I recognized that I could go further, I didn't take any risks. I didn't, and it made me a better man. Like overall, it made me a better person. It made me less susceptible to BS. It made me less susceptible to caring about bad opinions, because sometimes people might have an opinion that I need to listen to. Like I'm not perfect, you know what I mean? Like it's good to listen to other people and get that. And it's so hard because it's like taking medicine you don't like, you know what I mean? Like when somebody says something about you that, hey, they might be right, you have to take that medicine. You really do have to change a little bit. You have to change a little bit of who you are because they're right that you need to be better in a certain extent. I remember we played, this is a coach that never yelled at me, never screamed at me because I was performing, like once he had me and he trained me that little, month and a half or whatever, and that little one-on-one stuff, after that I skyrocketed it and I was doing really well at a low level. We were playing Division II. It wasn't the highest level of soccer, but it was still, I was killing everybody. I was getting recruited by other teams, getting recruited to go to Mexico. I was supposed to go to Mexico as a kid, and my dad was like, "No way," because he was so scared of like cartels and just things in general. Mexico didn't really have a good name back then. More now. I could go to Mexico tomorrow, and
It
I'd
was
love
a
it.
fear of the unknown, maybe. Yeah.
Fear of the unknown, and me being away. My dad didn't want his son going away, and he didn't want that. But I remember a game not too long after that, and it was like right before I left him because he sent us to another coach that was like his kind of his close friend, and we had played with them before. We played a game against an older team, like they were an older team, and they had this really good Hispanic player. he was older than us, like 2 years older than us. I was younger, but I was advanced. I was a little more advanced than my teammates. Like, you could tell I was a little bit further ahead, a little bit faster, a little bit quicker, a little bit, I wouldn't even say smarter, but I just knew what I was doing because just from that little time. And I just remember we played this kid and he was like really good. They were like, yo, Choke, he's really good. Like, you need to guard him. Like, I'm going to put you on him the whole game. And my mind wasn't ready to guard this kid the whole game because I'm like, look, I'm scoring the goals here. Like, I'm the guy who scores. That's what I do. And I'm so used to it in my head because that's my job. I'm not a midfielder yet. I hadn't turned into a midfielder yet. I was a striker only. Like, I only scored goals, kick the ball, run, beat everybody off the dribble, and score. That was like my thing. And coach was like, hey, you're going to guard this guy because you're the fastest player on the team. So you need to make sure he doesn't score. The majority of the game, I'm going around, and the kid's not really doing too much crazy stuff. I'm guarding him a little bit, but for like 1 second, I like tried to go and score a goal. I tried to go score, and I didn't score. And the kid took the ball, dribbled like 5 of our players, and just crushed one like in the corner or something like that. And my coach went like, this guy never yells. He's like yelling and screaming, and this is the first time I've ever had him yell at me. I'm like, whoa, like I was down. I was like, dang, like he actually yelled. Like, he never gets mad, he never yells or anything. I was like, what's wrong with him? Like, he's really tripping. And in the second half, he's like, Chijioke, you have to guard this kid or he's gonna kill us. When he yelled at me, a switch went off in my head. I was like, oh, okay, cool. That kid didn't touch the ball the second half, and we won the game. I actually ended up scoring a goal. I think we won like 3-1 or something. This was a long time ago. It's like I was like 10 or 11, 12. I remember it vividly because I just remember him yelling at me. And we won the game. I scored. The kid never touched the ball again because my coach yelled at me. And he never yelled, so I know it meant something to him. And then he grabs me, pulls me aside when after the game's over. He's like, hey, guys, good job. And then he's like, Joe, let me talk to you. And he talked to me. This is me at 11 years old, 11, 12. And he's like, hey, listen. He was like, the reason why I yelled at you and stuff like that is because, you have a responsibility. I was like, I didn't know what he's talking about. Responsibility about what? I'm 11 years old. You have a responsibility. He's like, you're the best player on the team. You're the fastest player on the team. You have a responsibility to always, to do more, to do better, and to be the best. Like, to be the best you can be. He said, you have the potential to do more than anybody on this team and to go further. And I don't want you to to mess that up because you're not focused and you're not doing things right. He's like, you can do more. You can do better than a lot of other players. You have the speed. He's like, I've never seen a player blessed with the kind of speed that you have ever in my life. He was like, you have to make sure you use it the right way and you make sure you do something with it. And, that kind of like triggered I'm like 11, but I'm hearing these things as a kid and I'm like, damn, like I mean something. My whole life people are telling me I'm nothing. That telling me that I'm not nothing. But
right, and it's like important as a young man because obviously a lot of players are playing for coaches and they don't want to see them upset, and that motivation works. But having the positive vision type conversation about who you are and your talents and how you support the team and all the ways that you can be great, that builds somebody up. So like, some of the coaches they result only to the screaming when you make the mistake. And that can get confusing, right? Players can shut down because they don't know what that means if that's all they get. But it sounds like he did a really great job of building up the trust and the safety in the relationship where you were like, okay, this is out of character. When he gets upset, something.
We were so close. And so it was like, he's a grown man with 2 kids, a wife, like, he's a grown, like, I'm the young guy. I'm a young black man. Like, he's probably never had a black person in his life, but, he's such a good person. He's so understanding about stuff. And it was so good to have somebody like that at that age because I felt like he loved me. I felt like he cared about me. He wanted me to be something. He didn't just want me to just come here and play. He like wanted me to do more. And to have that comfort is really, 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 really good. Now he comes and, he coaches me for like 3 years, 4 years or something like that. And then, so we used to have guest players come and play on our team. And it really helped our team a lot because we had a lot of, when you play your age, you're going to run into some competition, but when you play above your age, it's hard to beat you. And we had 3 guest players who were like, friends of mine that I didn't know, but he knew, and they would come and guest play with us, but they came from our rival team. So sometimes when we played in other tournaments, they'd come and play with us when they weren't in that tournament. And the head coach of the other team would take those 3 players and throw on our team. We were so much better. We were more dangerous. Like, we had just a really good team. It felt good. It felt right. And so those 3 players, they had their team. So our coach used to coach his son's team, which is a year younger than mine, and then my team, who was like his oldest age kid. So he was like, hey, look, I'm going to go coach my son's team. I'm going to spend more time with them. I'm going to send you guys to this guy named Miguel. Miguel is like the exact opposite of Coach Sam. Now I have this is from 11 to, this is from like, I had Coach Sam at like 9 or 8 to 15. So now I have two different types of coaches. Coach Sam is the quiet, very stoic, chill guy. Then you got Miguel, who's really Mexican. Like, he's the Mexican of Mexicans. He is yells, he screams, he'll get on you, he'll scream at you, and he doesn't care. Like, he wants you to work hard. If you're not working hard, you're not playing. Like, he's that guy. And you know, when I got to the team, I already played against them a lot. I already played against that team a lot. I scored goals on him. We had like a rivalry going on, so he knew who I was already. So he was like, okay, I'm getting him good. I can use him to help us win. But he didn't care that I came from another team because he knew how Coach Sam was. Coach Sam was very relaxed. He wasn't going to be like that. And it took me some time to get used to a little bit because I was so used to, like, you know, playing my game and being cool. But with Miguel, it was like, hey, if you make one pass, come on, man, come on. Like, what are you doing? Like, you know, like, I'm a grown man, but I'm still a kid. But that's how he treated us. And it was so good to have something like that. You know, that time I needed that. I needed a Miguel in my life, you know, because he put that really rock hard, like, no nonsense, like, tough guy. Like, I needed that toughness, and he gave me that. He still cared, but you could tell he cared. But he was very tough. He didn't want us. He didn't want us the world to swallow us up. He wanted us to be ready and to always be prepared. And it was like more just
And
as much as
that's a tremendous character, you know, strength of yours, be adapting different coaches and seeing, okay, they're each giving me something I need to be more, to be better. Right? There's different styles, but I can each, you know, they each give me something.
very
So take us forward. I want to make sure we get time, you know, being able to play Division I, Gardner Webb, Europe. You know, I mean, did you always know that you were going to wind up playing? I mean, Division I, only a few of the few get to play at that level.
I actually, like, didn't have I really didn't know, like, you know, my parents don't care about soccer. People don't know that. Like, my parents don't give a rat damn about, like, you know, any sports. Like, they're educators. They care about school. So, you know, if you want to do something you want to do, you gotta put your time in. I met a kid in high school, and his brother played pro. Actually, I played against him in high school, my freshman year in high school, and we played against each other, and I played okay. I used to come off the bench my freshman year in high school in JV, which is weird because I ended up being like the only kid in the history of the program to like play Division I soccer like that for a while. Like, not only one in the history of the program, but at that time frame, people weren't going D1, and I was one of the few kids. So it was weird. I came off the bench in JV, you know, and so I actually played okay in the JV game against him, and he messaged, and his parents actually know my parents we go to the same church. We live down the street from each other. I just didn't pay attention. He didn't go to my school. I didn't really know him that well. So I just remember him messaging me on Facebook saying, "Hey man, you're pretty good. Do you want to train?" I was like, "What?" Like, and I was on the verge, and I was really on the verge of just quitting soccer. I wasn't motivated anymore. You know, I was playing with Miguel's team, and you know, we weren't really going anywhere. And you know, I felt like I hit a roadblock, and I was gonna go play basketball because all my friends played basketball. I was like, man, soccer's over. There's no
This is an
motivation.
uphill battle. I don't know if I want this.
Yeah. It was time to give the game up because it was just getting boring now. And then my friend Ricky, he came around my freshman year of high school. He got me into like, hey, this is where it can take you. Like, you know, his brother had the golden boot from club soccer. He had like national championships from soccer, like opened up a whole nother world to me. Oh, MLS. And I knew what the MLS was, but I didn't know the relationships. And I started meeting players, and there was this whole world just came into my life that I never experienced before. And he really got me into training. And when I say training, I mean like really just rugged 3-day. Like, I started getting that obsession side of me, and he really taught me that. And really, like, he was a trainer. He wasn't as talented as I was, but he had the mentality I didn't have at that time. Like freshman year, sophomore year of high school, I wanted it, but I wasn't willing to die for it. Ricky was willing to die for it because his brother played. He wanted to be like his brother. You know, me, I didn't have an example for soccer. I didn't have a brother or uncle or cousin. I just wanted to play to be good and just have fun. But then I started being around him more, and he gave me that mentality, like, this is do or die type. And when you have that do or die mentality, you're going to go harder for whatever you're doing. Like, you know, if you feel like everything is a responsibility now to the highest level, like every time you go play somewhere, if you're not playing 100%, you can't play on this field. I was playing with the best players like in the country, like some of the my teammates and guys I was around, I would go play pickup soccer, and half 90% of the players were Region 3 ODP, or they were like in the Dynamo Academy, or they were just the best in Houston. So those were my pickup games, not even my real practice games, pickup games. And how I got my confidence was I would go out there and kill these guys. And I was barely playing JV, but I would go out there and kill those guys. So that gave me my own personal confidence. Whether my coaches at my high school didn't believe in me, whether those guys didn't believe in me, I had to have that confidence in myself as an individual and say, hey, look, I can play with these guys. I just need a chance. I need somebody to believe that, hey, I can do it. And when those chances came, I knew I had to kill it. I had no option but to do it. So he came into my life. And, I honestly, I had an offer D1. It was like I had a 40% scholarship to Long Island University. And, the coach was like, hey, man,
That's my neck of the woods.
Yeah, they were like,
I'm from
hey,
New York.
They were like, hey, look, we'd love to have you and da-da-da-da. And, you should come out for a visit. But I didn't want to go out to New York because I was like, man, I don't like the cold. I like the cold, but I didn't like the New York cold because I've been out there before. I was like, man, I want to go somewhere where I could
And
play.
playing in the cold is a different game.
Hey, that's what I'm saying. Like, so I wasn't really – I'm from Texas. I was like, nah, I'm not trying to do that. So I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to go out to Ricky was going to Gardner Webb, and this is before he ended up getting injured before he actually went to college in like a high school playoff game. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe I should go to Gardner Webb. It was in North Carolina, which is like the mecca for college soccer. UNC Chapel Hill's out there, NC State, Duke, all the top teams in the country are in North Carolina, and it's a great environment for soccer. So I was like, maybe I should go there. They weren't going to offer me a scholarship so late, so I kind of just went. Like, I went there, and they said, hey, look, if you could do well, you get a scholarship. They helped me out with, like, financial aid and stuff. But, if you come here and you do well, you get a scholarship after your first year. So I was like, oh, these guys not going to give me a scholarship. Oh, that got me even more psychopathic. So I was like, okay, you're going to give me a scholarship, so I'm going to go over there, and I'm going to, like, destroy everything. It was, like, no games from day one I got there. Like, I wasn't playing around at all.
So
and
did you walk on?
Or I wouldn't say walk on. It was, like, more of a, hey, we'll help you out, but we're not giving you the whole thing. And it was like, okay, well, that's kind of where I wanted to be as far as, like, being a footballer. Like, I wanted to be in that environment where there was a lot of pressure. They weren't that good of a program, but they thought they were, which, like, every program thinks they're the best. But they needed a guy like me to come in there and really, like, change the way they thought about this game, because this game to them was like, oh, we're just going to get this basic kid from nowhere. Like, no, I was special. I felt like I was special, and I felt like if I went anywhere, I was going to make the program better and not only lift myself, but lift the players around me to have to come and play. Because if you didn't come and play, I was going to bury you. And I was going to tell you I was going to bury you, like, I had that personality. So from day one, I went in there and I wasn't playing any games. And people were like, why are you taking this so seriously? I was like, it's not a game. Like, I'm out here to, like, get what I deserve and also, help the team as much as I can. And I was a freshman. I was 18 years old. I remember one of my teammates, I just talked to him yesterday night. His name's Eric Bowen, white kid from Tennessee. He's like my brother, man. Like, we're like this. Like, that's my guy. Like, and he told me my freshman year of college, he said, you don't play like a freshman. That's when I knew. I was like, all right, I can ball with these guys. Like, they're, some of the guys on my team are Canadian. They're 23. I'm 18, 23, 24. And back then, 23, 24 was like a, grown man. That's babies and kids. Like, it's not like now. We're 23, 24 now. It's like, oh, whatever. He's 23. But 23, 24 back then was like a big, you're a grown man. 18 was like still pretty grown, So I was like playing with these guys, and I just remember my coach, like, they really didn't plan on me coming in and being anything, because they're not used to guys coming in unless they recruited them to be these big players. They didn't plan on them coming in and making an impact. And I came in from the beginning, like, look, I'm coming here to, like, earn my spot and be the best. And so when I got in, I remember we had a scrimmage. We had a big scrimmage, and, like, you could feel like, hey, this is the scrimmage that's going to determine whether I'm going to be on the bench. You're going to be on the bench, or are you going to be a starter? And he actually put, like, their whole defense against me, like their starting defense against me. It was me and all the freshmen versus all the starters. And the defense was pretty good at the time because they had a lot of older guys, some Canadian guys that used to play on the national team. So, like, I was like, dang, like, I got to perform today. And if I don't perform today, I'm probably going to be on the bench the whole season because these guys probably don't even want me here in the first place. So I went out there and I destroyed everybody. My roommate was the starting goalkeeper at the time. He was 2 years older than I was. He transferred from Arizona. And I actually scored the only goal in that scrimmage, and I was the best player in that scrimmage. And they were like, okay, we can't have this guy not playing with us. So the next day, he got me from the non-starters, and he's like, hey, you need to come over here. And he put me in the starting lineup. So my freshman year, first game of the season against Marshall, I started and I scored in my first game ever at the school. And,
Wow.
that was great for me because, like, I had came from, like, them pretty much not really, really wanting me, kind of getting me from, like, a friend to, like, being, like, this like, young, energetic,
This is the
fast.
motivational move. I see this. It's the same as your mom not signing you up for soccer. We just got to keep using this now.
Hey, man, like, you gotta find ways, and you also gotta understand, like, the personal environment of your life. Like, with your friends and stuff. People are always gonna doubt what's right. They're always gonna doubt the thing that makes sense because they don't want to believe that it makes sense, and so you always have to prove yourself to even back. I always had this fear that back home I was gonna fail. Like, people back home are gonna think, oh, Chucky's just gonna go there and, like, he's gonna be terrible and he's gonna come back home. That was in the back of my head too. So for me, it was like the whole world was on my back. I have to perform. I have to play well. I have to start. I have to score. I have to be of service to the team, especially as a young player. Like, I have to be an impact player. So as the season started going along, I became like a real prime player for the team. I don't think the coach utilized me the right way. He didn't really know how to coach because most coaches in college soccer don't know what they're doing. But I became a big impact player on that team, and that year was crucial for me because I played a lot. I was starting at the beginning, and I came off the bench because they saw me better as, like, a 12th man coming off freshman. When they were taught, like, they'd use the players. The guy that was in front of me wasn't even a starting player, but it was better to use him and then me come off the bench and then really just bring a spark to the team. And we lost right before the championship game, and it was a good season for me. And then going into my sophomore year, I was becoming like the guy now. Like, it was my team because my freshman year we had another guy. He was really good, and he had been there for 4 years. And this was like my time to really come in there and, like, be an impact player and do all those things. And my sophomore year was a little shaky, but we went to the championship and we lost that year, and it was a good step for the program. Then my junior year comes around. We're the biggest, like, we're like the team that came from the championship and lost. So everybody's like, okay, they're going to be good this year. I'm a big I don't know, you're like a foreseer. I'm big on, I foresee a lot of things before they happen because I've seen the scenarios before, and I was a big movie guy. So I used to watch movies, and a lot of movies can show you things that can happen before something else happens. And I was like, look, if you don't bring, because we lost a lot of our older players. That sophomore year we went to the championship, we had a lot of veterans, a lot of older guys. The team was deeper. Like, we were a very deep team. Like, so we were losing a lot of guys from my junior year. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, we need to get some players in here. And I went to the coaches and I said, look, if you guys don't get any players, we're gonna lose every game next season. And they were like, well, I don't know. I was like, listen to me. I know I'm the guy and you can start seeing I had so much power and so much control. And people don't understand too is, like, when you have power and control, you have to use it the right way and not just abuse your power. I never did that. I always wanted to make sure my teammates were good, but also I want everybody to feel like they can come talk to me. And I had a big voice on the team, and I would go to the coach and say, look, you don't bring some players, we're going to lose every game next season. We're playing against the best teams in the country. UNC Chapel Hill on TV. We're playing against some of the top programs like UNC Charlotte, Furman, who had Walker Zimmerman, who's like the starting center back for the U.S. national team. Like, we were playing against these top guys. Like, they're not going to, like, have average players around some of these top players. So you got to understand you have to cultivate a team that can compete. And whether you win or lose is all about performance, but you got to be able to compete. And I don't think we had the team to compete that year. And I think that's one of the things that I don't think the coaches understood is that you can't bring a lot of young kids into college soccer. And, not every kid was going to be like me. They weren't going to come in with that do or die mentality. Like, this is life. They have other priorities and other things that matter to them, their girlfriend and their friend. That didn't matter to me. I was all about this game. And if you don't come in with that mentality as a freshman, it's going to be very hard for you to over excel. You can do well, but you have to over excel. No, not an 18-year-old. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to come in with that mentality. They just recruited wrong and didn't do the right stuff. And we were losing. We lost a lot of games that year. I had a great season as far as, like, individual. It's probably like my best physical shape I've been in as far as, like, just endurance. I could take anything. I could run. I could do whatever I wanted to do. We just didn't win. And, that cultivates into, like, people just losing their brains a little bit. And I think the culture of the program started to die, and it started to die with me. I didn't do anything specifically to die because when you're not winning, if you're not winning because you're trying your hardest, that's okay. You can live with that. But when you feel like people aren't really, like, taking it seriously, you see people laughing after games, or you see people, like, joking around at practice or something like that. For a guy who trains 10 months out of the year, 11 months out of the year, 12 months out of the year, which is a whole year. I train every day. I'm working hard to be the best player I can be. And you see people that are not doing those things in the summer, not going on vacations and doing those things, and then they want to come and mess up your
Yeah,
career
it's a
and
toxic
not
team
perform.
culture. Yeah.
It's not. It's and you want to tell these people those things, but they don't. You can't really tell people who don't want to know. So that
How did
was
you
what
turn it
my thoughts
around?
was
Did you
like.
get
You're not working
addressed,
as hard.
or did it just end that way?
Oh no. So the season ended. I said a few things that need to be said, and sometimes people don't like when you're like, especially when you're the voice of the team. I think they want you to just kind of, whether you're losing or winning. I think there's this thing about who cares whether you win or lose, and if you have that mentality, you probably don't want a guy like me with you, because there's no it's okay. There's no it doesn't matter. No, it does matter, because this is what you might not be going anywhere in a couple years, 3 years, but I'm going to the next level. I don't know what you want to do, but so when we lose, it hurts me. It hurts me as
Yeah.
a person. It
Well,
hurts
that's that commitment
hurts
to excellence that not everyone has, right? When you say, like, what happens today makes a difference in the rest of my life. How we show up, how we practice, right, impacts how the rest of my life and how I'm going to show up. And I want to show up exactly today as I want to in everything I do. That's the kind of leadership and commitment to excellence. And that's not, I think, players have a difficult time with losing, especially if they haven't lost before. Like, they don't know what to do to get out of it.
and you,
They don't know. They don't even see how they're a part of it. Like, people don't. If you don't really feel empowered to make change, and a team is a mechanism of family, of a lot of different structures, right? If I don't feel like I can have any ability to control the outcome, then people they default to some really negative habits. So you hope you get that from your coach or from a leader on the team. Sometimes it has to come from inside the team, right?
yeah, you wanted to, but you got to look at it like, and I'll even use this. I just talked to my teammate from that same school, from the college I went to, and we talked for 2.5 hours, and I haven't talked to him in 10 years. He's been like, we've texted and stuff, but we never really had this conversation. And all the social unrest going on, it was a perfect time for us to talk. And I
Yeah.
told him straight up. I said, if any white kid would have been in my position and acted the way I acted, they would have never had an issue. It wouldn't have been an issue. Now the outcome of I think we had a locker room conversation, and they asked us whoever wants to say something, and we every year we'd have this this rut where we'd lose 4 games in a row. I think 2 years in a row we lost 4 games in a row, and then this year we had lost 4 games in a row, but it was worse because we lose like 7-2 at halftime to a team. So it was like, what? And I wasn't even playing. I didn't play this game or something like that. I was on the bench or something like that. They were all mad, and they were like, "Oh, we're not playing you this game." I was like, "All right, cool. You don't have to play me." So they were losing. We were losing 7-2, and I just remember like going into the locker room and they were like, "Hey, can somebody talk? Does anybody have anything they want to say?" And I had reached my boiling point. I think I was going like past my boiling point. I was like, if it was 100 degrees was boiling point, I was like 150. So I was like, well, I think all you guys need to. I think we all need to stop acting like little girl. Like, nah, I wouldn't even say little girls, but like, you need to start acting like wusses and come out here and perform and like, work hard. It just wasn't. Nobody was taking it that seriously. And I pointed out to coaches and I said, hey, you guys are not even. You're not even motivating the players to even go hard. Like, we need you, and you. And there was like 3 coaches in there. We need you guys to step up too. It's not just the players. And I don't think they liked that very much. And I guess they felt like they were disrespected. But at the same time, I'm the one who can, if anybody can speak, and I always never spoke before. And I've always had that same voice, but I never spoke because I felt like, I don't need to say anything. They're not going to listen anyway. And this is the one year I was like, I need to say something because this is my team. Like, I need to speak for every single person in here because nobody's going to say anything because we're just going to keep losing. And I don't think they like that very much. And the rest of the season, I think it was just very sour. I can actually tell you a really funny, like really actually like kind of weird story. I I uh, I I had a training session and the coaches, they were just getting on me really heavy. And when I get really mad, especially with sports, I don't get mad in like my personal life because my personal life things don't make me that mad. It's only really sports and like my job. And so when I get really mad, I kind of don't speak to anybody because I don't want to say anything that is going to make anybody mad. I don't want to go off and like like that. So I just go and like show up to practice one day and I don't speak, and people are not used to me not speaking. They're like, "What's wrong?" Like, they're more worried about what's wrong with me than what's going on in practice. So I just remember showing up to practice, and my coaches were really getting on me. They're like, "Hey, we're gonna kick you out of practice if you don't speak." And I'm like, "What? Like, I don't have to speak to anybody. I can just practice." But they were so adamant on me speaking and having a voice. Like, I don't need to talk today because nobody's gonna listen. And this was my statement of like in practice, like, "Hey, look, I'm not saying anything to anybody. Let's just train and go home." And so, I was destroying people in practice without caring about playing hard. It was weird. It was the first time I ever didn't care about practice. And I was literally just dribbling by people like it was a kid's game, like it was like a joke. And it was my thing to show them I don't even have to try out here. I don't even have to care, and I can still beat every single player on this team. And that was my way of like proving to the coaches, like, "Hey, look, like this is how it feels when people come out and they're not going their hardest." So we have a little scrimmage, like a 5v5 type situation in practice. I just had one of my close friends. He was a teammate. He was like, "Oh, I can guard you." And I had been in the school for 3 years. Not one player I ever played with the whole 3 years I was there could ever guard me one-on-one. I was like, that was like my thing. Like if you try to guard one-on-one, I was unstoppable. And he was like, "Oh, I can guard you. I can guard you." So, when somebody comes at me like that, I'm like, "You don't put the work in that I do. You don't care about this game like I do. What makes you think you're going to be able to hold me?" So we have we have like a 5-on-5, and I'm pissed. Like I'm completely like I'm off the top of my head. Like you don't even know who this guy is, but I'm not speaking though. So we're playing in the scrimmage, and I'm just picking up the ball, and I'm telling every teammate that I'm playing because it's like 5v5. So I have 4 teammates. Don't even think about doing anything with the ball. Give me the ball every single time. I take the ball, and I just literally destroy every team. And it was quick. It was bang goal, and they'd swap out a new 5 would come on. Bang goal, swap out a new 5. And every time I scored, I turned to the coach that says, I was like, "Who are you going to?" I was like, "Who the are you going to get to guard me? Like, who are you going to get? There's nobody here. Everybody here is nothing like me." I was
They
going.
awoke the giant.
Oh, they were actually not even yelling at me. They didn't say anything. They just put their heads down because they had come at me. They had come at me in practice, like trying to disrespect me. And like, actually like one of my coaches, assistant coaches, he asked me to come do a demonstration for the team or like to demonstrate a drill. And I was just like, "Whatever, man, like I'll come do the drill." And he grabbed me by the arm. Now, today's world, that's harassment. Yeah, he actually grabbed me. It was harassment. And I just started laughing. I was giggling, and he whispered in my ear, if you keep doing what you're doing, I'll send you home faster than you can breathe." I'll never forget he said that. And I was like, whatever. I just started laughing. So he kind of disrespected me. So instead of going off on him and speaking to him, I put it on the field, and I embarrassed the coaches. And the players were like, "What's wrong with this guy? Like, he's going psycho." Like, I would score goals and just absolutely just cuss. Like, I would say so. I wouldn't even cuss at them. I'd be like, "Nobody can effing guard me. Y'all are nothing." Like, and the whole team's like, "Wow, this guy like is really going like he's destroying everybody in practice," and then cussing like saying all these things. And I think like that teammate that said he could guard me, I dribbled by him and I scored on him. I was like, "Don't ever disrespect me ever like that again. I earned mine. Like I earned to speak like this. I earned to talk like this. Get off my field." And he just walks off the field and doesn't say anything. And then I say all these things all in practice. And after the thing ended, I had never been outside of my mind. I felt like I was outside of my mind. It was like my beast mode moment. I never felt like that in a practice situation. But I was so angry because these guys took me to that level. And then after practice, I went up to the coach and said, "Hey, I apologize. I didn't cuss at them. I didn't say F you to them. I just was so angry at everything that was going on and the way they were treating me that practice was a statement to say, I'm the best player on this team regardless."
So did it cause a shift?
Well, they didn't play me the game before that, and they started me every game after that. So it was like I had to go and disrespect them for them to understand, like, what are you doing? I'm the best there that you have here. There's nothing else you're gonna find here. So you're gonna have to play me every single game, whether we win or lose. And they just like played me every single game. So at the end of the day, it didn't really matter. But at the end of the season, I think they felt like, they not that they couldn't control. I wasn't like a mad kid. I never got in trouble. You live your whole entire career. You see all these things happen in college football where players are getting arrested and, they have drugs on them or they're drinking. And I just never did those things, man. And like, I never was that kind of player. And I just remember the coaches, they kicked me off the team. They kicked me off the team at the end of the season. And I asked them, like, "You can't kick me off the team for not doing anything." And they're like, "Yeah, we can. If we don't like the color of your shirt, we can kick you off the team." So
So that's where it's like a culture thing. And so unfortunately, organizations, even in sport, care about politics and maintaining a status quo. And it sounds like, right, that anger is like a deep-seated, like, I want this whole organization to be better.
They
Is
would have never
is
done that. They would have never done it. And I think too is like I had such a big voice on the team, and I was doing all the right things. And my coach, he was straight up. He was like, "Look, this is a power thing. It's like at the end of the day, like you have more power than me on the team. The players listen to you more. The players believe in you more. And at the end of the day, I don't want that." And I was like, "Well,
yeah,
if I'm doing the wrong thing, then it's different. And if we can come to an agreement, and the thing was that he was doing the wrong stuff." That he rather do the wrong stuff his way than do the right thing my
yeah,
way. And I'm always down to, work together and stuff like that. But for him, I never wanted to be the coach. But you have to do the right stuff so we can get the players motivated and do the right things.
right,
And that was hard for him. He couldn't do that. And that was really the turn of like my soccer. Then soccer started changing for me because I was at my peak really as a footballer, like physically, mentally, like I really had everything going for me fit like as a footballer. You could have dropped me anywhere. You could have dropped me at Manchester United and I would have competed with those guys. They wouldn't have been able to guard me.
yeah.
You know?
Well, Chioke, it's amazing. I know we can go into a whole lot more. Maybe just in summarizing, for our listeners, how did you
Mm-hmm.
turn that lesson into a lesson for life? And tell everybody, maybe in the last closing minutes here, how they can get a hold of you and stay in contact and learning about, leadership and overcoming adversity and resilience. How did you
Uh,
take that lesson forward?
I think the biggest thing is like when you see something that you don't think is right, you have to earn the right to speak, and you have to earn the right to have a position. I think sometimes we're so quick to just say things because we feel like it's wrong, and that's true. But depending on where you are, depending on what you're doing, especially in a sporting environment, I earn the right to speak to players and to talk to the coaches and do these things. And I always tell people all the time, like, if you see something that's wrong, talk to your other leader before you talk to the top leaders and get their perspective and get them to understand where you're coming from. See, I was the leader, and anytime something happened, players would come to me. Now, I earned that right. And as an individual, you want to be the best you can be so you can earn the right to be a leader. It's anybody can be a leader, but to earn the right to be a leader, there's a lot of experience in that. There's a lot of like ups and downs. There's a lot of failure. And then when you get to the point where people are actually coming to you for advice, you became a leader. I never wore the captain's armband. Not one time I think I ever played. I don't think my whole soccer career I wore the captain's armband, but everybody knew I was the leader of the team. And for whatever reason I didn't wear the captain's armband, I didn't care because leadership isn't because of an armband or a title. It's a personality. It's the way you treat your teammates on and off the field. Like that really matters. At the end of the day, take those things from a young age, from like a young kid, all the way to 11 years old, to now I'm 28, and I use a lot of the stuff I use in soccer, and I use it in my work today, like working in production, and because it's all leadership skills. And the best thing you can do, you have to make people feel comfortable around you, but you also have to understand that you're the leader, and when you're a leader, you have to stand on your feet firm, but stand on your feet firm comfortably, and make sure people around you feel like, hey, this guy doesn't play around, but he also cares about me. He also wants me to do well. And don't let people take you out of your position. At the end of the day, they want to be you, but it's hard to replace somebody who's always doing the right thing. You know what I mean? It's really hard to replace somebody always doing the right thing. And when they do replace you, it will be a complete absence of that whole entire establishment because they're gonna feel that hole that you left.
Right. But you said something really important that even when we have like this righteous anger, even when we're right, even when we're validated, even when we see the vision, and I get this a lot, as well, obviously psychologists caring about humanity, community, team as a performance consultant, right? You may have the vision, but if a coach believes he doesn't have the power, or if other players believe that they're disempowered, or if they're so impacting by believing the other team is better or they're not as good, when they hit adversity, it's hard to shift those belief systems. So you
So
really need to be a part of, a culture where it's
culture,
being
exactly.
created where, right, what is the ethic? How do we deal with stress? How do we deal with conflict, right? How do we help the players feel heard? How do we address this kind of dynamic in a team where someone is not given as much effort or someone's shutting down when we fall behind? What happens to teams that like do really well when they're front running, but when then they get challenged by better teams or bigger teams. So working within these dynamics and finding ways to support players who have that strong voice and leadership, sounds like a real area of focus you're trying to bring to coaches, right? Because sometimes you just want players who will fall in line and follow orders, and that's not really what's best for a program to grow. So I thank you for being that voice, for not being afraid, even at 11 years old with bigger bodies around. And I hope we'll get to hear more about your continued playing games. I know you're still looking for a big game in non-COVID times to get out there and play with the best.
Try to. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. I'm grateful for you, Chijioke, and for reaching out and being an ambassador of goodwill.
Of course.
And hopefully we'll be out there together watching the game soon. I know some states are playing and breaking down. They're at different levels of play. I think they're at level 4 of being okay to play in Arizona now. So it's confusing as it's ever been.
Wild times, bro. We'll get through it. Take some time.
That's right. Well, thank you for making time. We're grateful on behalf of our listeners, and hopefully we can connect next time in person.
Yes, sir. Of course. Yes, sir. Of course.
All right. Thank you.
All right, boss man. See you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you again. That was an amazing discussion with Chijioke Akujuobi. I'm working on my pronunciation. I thank him for his patience. Soccer player extraordinaire, professional, now here in entertainment, bringing his leadership and his voice to you and how to show you, even if you're the youngest, even if your parents don't sign you up, if you have a true passion, desire, hunger to learn, hunger to play, and a passion that you can pursue it even at the highest levels. We hope to have him back on with a Q&A, learn more about even playing in Europe and beyond. Thank you, everybody. On behalf of my whole staff, I'm Richard Listens, and I'm out.